Y'all, we are live.
Hey.
Yo,
What's
yo.
up, fam?
It's been a little minute. Let
You know what I'm
yourself
saying? I'm
in.
feeling all refreshed. You know what I'm saying? I'm feeling good. I got a little break, you know?
Make sure y'all still take y'all shoes off at the door. We gonna stay respectful. Don't act brand new. You feel me? We took a little hiatus, just a quick little hiatus. We had a greatness to witness. So some of us did.
I was really hoping we was gonna slide, but I saw your background and I already know what time
Nah.
I'm gonna let you have your moment. So go ahead and get it off your chest.
Listen,
How was your trip?
We took a week to witness greatness. I did enjoy myself, I did. I actually needed a week just for my voice to recover. I was getting crazy in there.
Oh, so
you know what I'm saying? Yeah, barking on Bengals fans, because they came in kind of tough. I'm like, y'all should be grateful that y'all even in LA right now, to be honest.
So they came with the wrong energy. You had
they came in kind of sideways. Like, it's sometimes you gotta come in with some humility and gratefulness just to be in the space. You know what I'm saying? And I just felt like they needed to be reminded of that by the end of the night. But it was a good time,
It was. Halftime show was very nice.
Popping.
Very nice.
Yeah,
that's one in a minute. So
I felt very blessed. You feel me? I felt like God's son that day.
You deserve that. You deserve that. I was happy for you, bro. You deserve that.
Yeah, no, that was crazy. But
I'm sure you need tonight back to this budget though.
Oh, most definitely. Yeah. Nah. I got smacked upside the head like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. Yeah, okay. That was. I had to look at it like, you know what? This is a once in a lifetime experience, man. I did not pay full price for them tickets, so don't be. I know folks was pocket watching like, oh, Tebow got money. He paid 20 bands for the. No. Let's keep it 100. I paid $750 for them tickets. I didn't get cracked like that, but I paid more for the flight. And, I had to eat while I was in LA too. You feel me? So I spent a little piece of change, but it was cool though. But we're not going to waste too much time on that. I just had to, bask in it, But we got Khalida with us. Khalida, right?
Yeah, that's right.
We got Khalida with us, man. Khalida hit me. She was like, I just feel like the Cuzzos they just be spending too much bread. I could see it in their eyes. I could see it in their face. I could tell by their comments, like it sounded like they need some assistance with budgeting. And I was like, you know what? You're right. I feel like 70-30, that's kind of one of the foundations, one of the pillars of the come up. And, our the people that we look up to, they got a lot of money, so they 70-30 gonna look a little bit different than, some of us just graduated one contract game Cuzzos. You feel me? So we got Khalida here. She volunteered to do this. I didn't even have to ask her. So very grateful for her. Another woman on the stage, very grateful for that. And I'm not going to waste too much more of her time. I already done grabbed up 5 minutes. We're going to let her have the floor and show us how to say this bread so we could put some more in the market. You feel me?
Yeah, dope. Yeah, I wanted to add value because Mark just gave us all the gems. So I was like, let me add because of some kind of how. Since he won't let us pay,
Facts.
So let me go ahead and share this screen so we can get right to it. Just let me know when y'all can see it.
We can see it. We got you, sis.
All right, cool. All right, what's good, cousins? My name is Khalida Jenkins Gandy. I just got married, so I got to give my husband his love on his name.
Here, congrats.
Thank you. And today we're just going to talk about that 70-30 lifestyle. As you know, Mark and Jolene, and Tebow just mentioned it, they always stressing the need to invest like 70% of your income so you can fast track your walkaway date. And so today we're going to do like a relatively high level step-by-step walkthrough of how you can go from basically living check to check to invest in like 70% of your income so you can retire early and live that financially free leisure life we always hear so much about, So let's get started. Let me get to the next slide if it'll show me some love. There we go. All right, so before we, launch off, I'm an attorney, so I always got to come through with that disclaimer. That said, I am not a financial advisor. I'm not certified in any way. Everything shared in the PowerPoint is just purely for educational and informational purposes. The good news is everything I'm sharing tonight comes straight from the School of the Hard Knocks. Either I have personal experience with it or someone close to me does. People sometimes ask me like where I learned all of this from. And the truth is, it's just a combination of personal life experiences and financial gain that my mom gave me. So shout out to moms who taught me a ton about money. The reason I'm telling y'all this is so you know everything's actual and factual. I'm very practical, pragmatic type person. I didn't learn it from Dave Ramsey or some finance guru, even though some of the strategies do align. I've actually gone through these steps in my own life successfully and then was able to duplicate it for those around me. So it's definitely doable for you guys. And with that out the way, let's get to it. So here's tonight's agenda. We got a ton of material to cover. I'm trying to give y'all all the gems tonight. So I'm going to move through it as quickly as I can. But you'll notice the 70-30 roadmap is broken down by quarter. And this is just to help y'all keep track of where we are in the roadmap at any given time in the presentation. I've also included a slide tracker at the bottom of almost every slide to help with that. But what's most dope about this setup is you can also use it to track what stage you're in your personal life once you start applying this information. I love AJ. She be over there like, I love it. But the first quarter is something you can complete tonight, really, if you want it, or tomorrow, if you're a little tired, because it's 8 o'clock here on the East Coast. But the second and third quarters may take you a year or two, maybe 3. It really depends on your situation. And the fourth quarter is a stage you'll be in until you reach that financial independence, retire early, that FIRE movement out here. I also say that the first 2 quarters contain most of the heavy lifting. In comparison to the second half, you can think of the second half like the cool down workout, right? But it'll make more sense as we move through the material. All right, so here are the 5 stages to financial freedom. Similar to the 4 quarters already mentioned. Just knowing and understanding these stages helps you keep track of it, like exactly where you are in your financial freedom journey. Not only does it remind you to celebrate where you are in relation to where you've been, but it also helps you keep in mind just how close you are to the finish line. And believe it or not, a lot of people are closer to the finish line than they think. So the 5 stages are made up of first, financial struggle. That's where you're living check to check. You got more month than money, Second is financial vitality, where you have a little more breathing room just because you've managed to adjust your lifestyle a little bit. So your living expenses no longer exceed your means. Third is financial security. That is a breath of fresh air once you get there. But you basically paid off all your revolving and high interest debts. And you have like a 3 to 6 month emergency fund, which ultimately gives you peace of mind. Peace of mind is everything. Fourth is financial independence. And that's where your passive income exceeds your living expenses. And then fifth is true financial freedom, where your passive income has reached a point that you can live the life of your wildest dreams. And it's really not as much as you would think. I did Tony Robbins has a calculator you can use. And when I put up like my life of my wildest dreams, it was only like $496,000 a year. I thought I would need millions of dollars, but I didn't. So you can live the life of your wildest dreams on a budget too, But I've personally walked through the first 4 stages of the journey, having hit a level where my passive income exceeds my living expenses. But the ultimate goal is to hit that stage 5 in the next couple of years. And thanks to the Come Up series and the cousins, I'm right on pace to hit that, in early 2024. So before we get to the meat and potatoes, I just want to lay out a few prerequisites to the 70-30 plan. First, I can tell you without a doubt, the journey is going to require discipline, mental fortitude, and consistency. I mean, as soon as you set your goals and try to execute on them, life's going to happen. It just always does. It's almost like the universe wants to test you just to make sure you mean business. Life happened to me quite a few times while on this journey, and even other people I know. So I'm sure it'll happen to you too. But really, you just got to eat the punches and keep it moving. You don't want to let life discourage you from just putting one foot in front of the other, because that's really all it takes. It's those small steps taken consistently over time. Also, you want to write down your goals. It's really hard to hit a target you can't see. I'm personally a fan of SMART goals, which stands for specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and time bound. An example might be I'll automatically invest $500 a month into an S&P 500 index fund for the next 10 years. That hits every one of those points. So with your goal setting, you also want to stretch yourself, but not stress yourself. There's always this sweet spot between capability and challenge, and you want to be mindful of that. So sometimes if you challenge yourself like too far beyond your capability, you run the risk of becoming discouraged or overwhelmed and eventually quitting. So at the end of the day, this process is meant to be fun and invigorating. So you don't want to set goals that will stress you instead of stretch you. And finally, once you start this process, you definitely want to stop borrowing from your future self to pay for it today. That means don't create any more debt while you're going through this process. You can't live above your means. You need to stop using credit cards to support bad spending habits, right? You just got to tell yourself no at the end of the day. But financial freedom really does require you to start making decisions today that your future self will thank you for. All right, we're about to get into this first quarter. Okay, so just like a GPS, you need to know where you are and where you're going before you can start, which is why I mentioned the goals in the last slide. We're going to talk more about your starting point in this slide. But my mom always says you got to count your costs, right? So one of the first things you should do is set up your personal finances like a corporation. Think of it as you Inc. So just like a business, you want to protect your bottom line. And if you can grow your top line, that's great too, right? But you can only do that when you know how much money is coming in and how much money is going out every month. That said, what you can do tonight or tomorrow is get out all your bills, your most recent pay stubs, and write down in detail your total income and your total expenses. I mean, take out everything, your membership, subscriptions, debt payments, child support payments, if you have them, passive income, active income, everything. Anything that puts money in your pocket or takes money out, you definitely want to write it down. And you want to write down what the amount is monthly, right? Also write down the total value of your assets and liabilities. So the accounting definition for an asset is something you own, and a liability is something you owe. Kiyosaki defines it a little differently, but for the purposes of tonight, we'll just keep it at the accounting definition. All right, next, you'll want to create a simplified personal income statement and balance sheet using this information, the information that you just gathered from your total income and total expenses, okay? These will be based off some basic accounting equations that are shown here. So you'll have your total monthly income minus your total monthly expenses, which equals your total monthly cash flow. And then in your balance sheet side, you're going to have your total assets minus your total liabilities, which equals your equity or net worth. All right, so to clarify, the actual accounting equation is assets equals liabilities plus equity, but I just moved liabilities to the left side of the equation to keep things simple. All right, and the end result should look something like this. Let me pull it up for y'all real quick. All right, so this top half is the income statement. You see here you have your gross income less taxes, and this is your net income, your salary, right? If you have like a side business or a side hustle or investments or something that's making you money, then that's where this will go, this passive income. And it's all color coded, like I said. So you have your net income plus your passive, and that gives you your total income right here. Next is all your expenses. So all your expenses are here. And when you sum those up, you have your total expenses. So your total income minus your total expenses equals your monthly cash flow. We're going to ignore this part for now. We'll come back to this a little later when we talk about the zero-based budget. But setting up your personal income statement is as simple as that. All right. And I already asked Tiva and AJ if we could upload some of these resources. So don't worry. I'll make sure I share the spreadsheet so y'all can use it. And but down here is your balance sheet. All right. So you have your savings. Average person doesn't have more than 400 in their savings account. So that's why I use that number. But if you have like a 401k, 403b, whichever retirement plan your employer might have, that will go here. Car equity, I have it in this example, is 15,000. But you'll also notice on the liability side, you have a balance of 10,000. So that means your car will be worth 25,000. So you still owe 10, but you own technically 15,000 worth, right? Same with your house. So you have your home equity at 150, your mortgage loan balance might be 150. So if you add these two up, that's 300,000. So you have 150 that you've already paid off, but you still owe 150. So that's how you kind of come up with your assets and liabilities. And then down here is a total of these four numbers. Over here is a total of your liabilities. When you subtract liabilities from assets, here's your net worth. And that's pretty much how that's set up. It's pretty easy. So I don't know what your income statement and balance sheet may look like after you've taken the time to do this, but regardless of the numbers, like, don't be discouraged. When I first did it, I had very little monthly cash flow. I'm talking like less than $200 after all the bills were paid. I don't know what I was doing with my cards. I was spending all crazy. But I also had like a negative net worth. But since then, I've managed to turn things around drastically. And I'm about to show you guys exactly how I did that. And we can now move on to the next slide. It's hating on me again. There we go. Okay, so once you have done your income statement and your balance sheet, you'll know exactly where you are financially. So the next step is to pay attention to how you spend your disposable income. So that's that monthly cash flow we talked about, right? And once you start paying attention to that, you can start to like plug the leaks. And what we're really looking to capture are those small expenditures that add up to take out big chunks out of your bank balance. I don't know about y'all, but there'll be times like, I'm like, oh, I got $1,000 in my bank account. And then I'll come back a week later and it'll say 200. And I'm like, where did it all go? You know? And that's what we're really looking for, because what you don't notice is that little $10, $20 you might spend on lunch. Doesn't seem like much at the time. But if you order Uber Eats 5 times a week at just like $20 a pop, that's $100 a week. This is just a work week, $100 a week, and then $400 a month on just one meal. That doesn't even account for like a daily Starbucks run, your other daily meals, any entertainment you may engage in throughout the week, etc. And it's always those small expenditures compounded over the course of a month that take you from having 500 or 1,000 left over after all the bills are paid to legit, like, where did my money go? So this is why the next step in the process is to identify all areas of wasteful spending, cut back on that wasteful spending, and put a cap on it. Now, there are 2 ways that you can identify these areas. One way is to print out your last 2 or 3 months of bank statements and highlight all discretionary or wasteful spending. This could be money you spend on eating out, going out, clothes, shoes, entertainment, drinks at the club, whatever. The other way is to manually track your spending for 3 weeks. You can do this in an app. You can do it like on your notes app. You can carry around a small pen and pad like I did. It's whatever works for you. The key is really just to track every single thing you spend your money on for a given period of time. Also, it doesn't matter whether you're spending cash, credit, or if you're just giving a couple dollars to someone on the street, you still want to track all of it. Keep in mind, you don't have to track those fixed expenses, right? Because you've already covered those on the income statement we just talked about. The main focus is to track how you spend your disposable income or monthly cash flow. And once you've done that, what you'll usually find is most of your monthly cash flow is spent on food or entertainment. That's like across the board. But once you've taken 3 weeks to track your spending, or you've highlighted the last few bank statements, you want to sum up your total spending and determine what your average spending is per week. And on the slide, you can see an example of like the 3 weeks method, right? Here you have 3 weeks of spending that's tracked by activity and amount. And underneath that are the totals for each week. So when you add those totals together and then divide by 3, you get your average. And then once you have your average, you'll want to use that number as a gauge to determine the budget you should set for your fund. That's what I call this, your fund, right? If your average weekly spending is a little high, like it is in this example here, you may want to be a little aggressive in the budget amounts you set. But if it's under 125, you can just round to like the nearest fifth. For instance, if your average was 121, you would just round down to 120. What I like about the fund is it's like the financial equivalent of a cheat meal. When you're working to get your money right, you can't be all business all the time, or you'll just start to resent the process. So having that weekly fund to spend on whatever you want, it just gives you a little breathing room to still have some freedom, but it sets a boundary on that freedom to keep it from getting out of hand. I personally recommend having a fund somewhere between like 75 to 125. I know that's a little aggressive, but when you think about it monthly, that's about $300 to $500 a month. For me, I started with $80 a week. And honestly, even though my income is like quadrupled since I did this process the first time, I still abide by that $80 a week budget because I got a goal and I'm trying to hit that goal. And also, like, human beings are really excellent at adapting to new norms. So you'll find that you adjust to the new budget pretty quickly, like before you even know it. But keep in mind too, this is only a temporary sacrifice. It's something you're only doing until you hit the goal. And then, once you set that fund, you can continue tracking it on spending apps or like spending trackers. Some people use Mint, some people use Truebill. I use a spending tracker from MH Riley. It's whatever app you want, as long as you're keeping track of it. My nephew, he actually puts his fund on his Cash App card to keep him from going over budget. So he leaves his debit card and credit card at the crib, and he just uses his Cash App card. So it's just whatever works for you. You know you best. So the next step, after you know where you've been and you plug the leaks, is to start trimming the fat. This is where you're starting to reduce your expenses, because when it boils down to it, there's only two ways to make money, right? You either reduce your expenses or you create more income. And we're going to touch on a little bit of both in this slide. But when I initially laid out my money management plan, I was able to save like $500 a month, which is the equivalent of $6,000 a year, right off the bat, just by using this process. And since then, I've become much savvier at it. And now I've increased my savings to like thousands of dollars a month. So this is why it's one of the key strategies I recommend people spend time on when they're trying to work their way to that 70-30 lifestyle. So here, you first want to look at those expenses on your income statement that you just wrote out and determine areas where you can cut back. And it will require you to get a little creative and think outside the box, but it's something you can implement immediately. So on the slide, I've listed a few examples. These are by no means exhaustive. I just wanted to put some things out there to kind of get your brain flowing so you can start thinking like, how can I do this for me? But there really are a ton of ways you can reduce your living expenses. One of the first things I say is like, you should never be loyal to anyone but your wallet when it comes to the money, right? Folks who know me, they know I'll cancel a subscription or switch service providers in a heartbeat. I don't like contracts because I'll break them, But you can also even leverage group economics. For example, on average, people subscribe to like 4 streaming services. But if you have 4 friends or family members who are willing to share account information, each of you could pay for just one service, but have access to 4 different like platforms. So with my folks, like one has Netflix, one got Disney Plus, one got Paramount, one got Stars. We share the Amazon Prime membership. Some have, actually I have Hulu and HBO Max, but HBO Max is free. But I mean, because of that, I'm getting access to 7 streaming services and I'm only paying for 1. So it's an easy savings right off break of $50 a month, right? And if you do have access to multiple streaming services, you can also cut the cord. You can just grab an HD antenna from Amazon for like $25, maybe 30. And you can get all your local channels that way, and then you can cut your cord. Or I call DirecTV like every 5 seconds and bargain down my price just because they know I can go to YouTube Red and pay $60 a month instead of rocking with them. So I'm always calling them to negotiate my price down. So that's another way you can get your price down. Or you could, if they call your bluff, switch. Either way, it saves you money. Another thing you can do is if you Google your local public services commission, you can research which electric and gas companies have the lowest kilowatt hours and therm rates for your electricity and gas. This is something I also do once a year. So in Atlanta, I live in Atlanta now, they have deregulated utilities, and Atlanta Gas and Light gives everyone their natural gas, but you can shop around for who you pay your bill to. And because of that, I'm switching gas providers at like every 12 months. And I'm sure that Atlanta's not the only place you can do that, right? Another thing you can do is shop home and auto insurance providers against one another. There's websites like Gabby.com, which is listed here, PolicyGenius.com. They'll do the work of shopping the rates for you to find the lowest insurance provider in your area. Sometimes even you can like open up an account with a credit union and save money on insurance. Both my sister-in-law and my cousin ended up saving over $100 a month just by opening an account with a credit union and calling an insurance company that partnered with them and getting their insurance through them. And trust me, Atlanta insurance is crazy because there's accidents every 5 seconds. So saving $100 a month is huge here because insurance be like $300 a month down here. Also, make sure you're getting all your discounts on your insurance. I'm always calling Liberty Mutual for that same thing. You know, I'm like, oh, can I get a discount on defensive driving? Do I need to install a driving tracker? You get discounts for auto pay or paying in full, multi-policy, multi-car. In Georgia, you get a discount if you go back to like traditional uninsured instead of add-on uninsured. You can raise your deductible and decrease your insurance payment. Especially if you have an emergency fund with at least $1K in it, like you might as well just raise your deductible to $1,002 because you got the cash to pay for it if you need it, right? I'd rather take the risk and have that money in my pocket every month than let Liberty Mutual take that money every month. Another thing you can do is either forego gym memberships or share them. And you can forego any other non-essential memberships. A lot of times those subscriptions and memberships, again, it's those small things that add up to a lot, you know, and they're eating away at your pockets. So when I was aggressively paying down debt, I just worked out at home. I mean, between YouTube and the Nike Fitness app, you can find plenty of at-home workouts. Also, if you are a homeowner, I know a lot of people in their 20s don't know this, but if you're a homeowner, make sure you've applied for the homestead exemption. The homestead exemption, it reduces the amount you pay annually for your property taxes. For me, I think it saves me like $500 or $600 a year just by applying for the homestead exemption. Another option is to use apps like Truebill to manage your subscriptions or negotiate lower pricing on your bills. I haven't personally used it, but I have a coworker in finance that absolutely loves it and swears by it. And he knows his money. He does the money thing, so I trust him. That's why I'm bringing it up. But you definitely want to make sure you're getting all your discounts. Also, you can get discounts with a cell phone provider a lot of times through your employer or by like being a part of a credit union or other groups. So just make sure, you know, if there's some group or an employer that you work for, you're getting that 15 to 20% discount on your cell phone bill. Family plans are also a blessing when it comes to that cell phone bill. Other things you can do is definitely meal prepping. You know, I know inflation is eating us up on groceries right now, but I've switched to meal prepping instead of eating out. And if you have an Aldi in your area, I've switched to shopping there. I used to shop at this high-end grocer called Publix. I know they're pretty popular in the South. I don't know where else they are in the country, but I saved $300 a month just by switching from shopping at Publix to shopping at Aldi. You know, and don't be fooled by the cheap prices. A lot of Aldi's food is good quality. Another thing you can do is liquidate household gold. My sister-in-law made hundreds of dollars just selling used clothes and shoes on like StockX and Poshmark. And she even took some clothes over to Plato's Closet. So there was actually some study done that showed like the average American wears 20% of their clothes 80% of the time. So you'd be surprised how many clothes and shoes you have just collecting dust in your closet that you could liquidate for cash to use to pay off debt. Another strategy I've used and I'm still using is house hacking. I have a big house and it's just me and my husband. So we rent out the 3 other bedrooms to family and friends. Again, it's those group economics are everything. And I'm not trying to head rock them either. We split the mortgage and utilities equally, which keeps living expenses extremely low for everyone who lives here. You know, full transparency, I pay about $500 a month for all of my home living expenses between the mortgage and utilities. That's it. So house hacking is a godsend. And if that is not an option for you, you can also entertain moving back in with your parents temporarily or purchasing a home like with 2 separate living spaces and renting out the spare living space. I had to move in with my parents for 2 years in my late 20s. You know, it wasn't my proudest moment, but it was the best decision for me at the time. And it set me up right. It's just really whatever it takes to get your money right. And I only had to do it for 2 years. So it was worth the sacrifice. But another thing could be just living low maintenance temporarily. I hate to say this, ladies, but y'all know how much it costs to get your hair, nails, and lashes done every couple weeks or every week or however often you go. So if you can manage to do any of those things for yourself for just a little bit, it's 100% worth that temporary sacrifice. Also, you might have to cut down on travel. I didn't travel the whole time I was paying off debt. And if you don't want to go that extreme, just keep it to local travel. You don't have to go to Europe every year. You could just go to Florida or something. And if you also if you travel hack, if you can. If you don't know what travel hacking is, it's when you like search for sign-on bonuses with travel cards and you use those bonuses to pay for like airline tickets, rental cars, hotels, things like that. I still travel hack to this day. I just time it to make sure it's not messing up my credit score. But it's one of the best ways to bring down the cost of a trip. And the last item on this list is you want to just leverage the gig economy or other side hustles to create more income if you can. Me personally, I've done all types of things. Like I work with my cousin. We put a spare car on Turo and hire a car. We've done Airbnb arbitrage. That's when you lease an apartment from somebody and rent it out on Airbnb full time. I've done drop shipping. I've sold authorized user lines on trade line supply. There are a few risks to that, by the way. I figured out the risk and then I mitigated them, but I'm just letting y'all know, do your research. Also, we all know there's no shortage of people who do Uber or Lyft while they're paying down debt. Instacart, TaskRabbit, Fiverr. There's all these different freelance sites that you can use to create extra income. There's a ton of ways out there. So for me, after going through all that trial and error, I went through that trial and error for about 3-4 years. So I've been around the boat, but I've come to love the Airbnb arbitrage. Turo was good too. It depends on how close you are to an airport. If you're close to an airport, you get a lot of traffic. Selling trade lines has been good for me, and writing options. Those are my favorite ways to create extra income now because they're very passive. But regardless, between trimming the fat and growing your income, you can definitely increase your monthly cash flow considerably just by thinking outside the box. And once you trim the fat on your monthly expenses, update your income statement with the new information. And if you do a before and after comparison, you should see a significant improvement in the amount of money you have left over every month. All right. So after you trim the fat, the next step is to update your income statement and then create a zero-based budget. And with the zero-based budget, you're basically just given every dollar a task, and that includes your monthly cash flow. So for example, if you have a total income of $4,000 and total expenses of $3,000, you're left with a monthly cash flow of $1,000. So you need to tell that $1,000 where to go until your balance is down to zero. And I have an example of that too. And it's very similar to what I use every month for my own expenses. All right, so this one's a little different than what I showed before because the income statement was for a month, and this is for like every check. I get paid semi-monthly, so I have 2 checks. This is not my actual income, by the way. It's just an example. But you can still see you have net income, some passive income. So your total income, expenses are here, total expenses, and then you subtract total expenses from total income. Here's your monthly cash flow, $715. I tithe 10% of my money. So you got tithes here. Here's the fund. Like I told y'all, it's $80 a week. So this accounts for 2 weeks. So $160. And now we still have this $355 left over after that. And this is the money that I either put towards debt, savings, or investment. And when I was first starting out, every dollar here went to debt. Every dollar. I know Dave Ramsey talks about doing like $1,000 first before you start paying off debt, but I was living on the edge. I wanted out of debt so bad, I just was like, forget it, I'm going straight to that. And you do the same thing for check 2. Obviously, check 2, you have a little more cash left over because you're not paying your mortgage or your rent. But again, it goes to debt, savings, or investment. And this is another resource I'll give to Tivo and AJ so they can upload it. But I still, to this day, use this Excel spreadsheet to keep track of where my money's going. It's great. I've been using it for like a decade, real talk. All right, so once you set up your zero-based budget in Excel, you'll just actively manage it every time you get paid. Again, once you have it all set up, do your best to like stick to the budget, right? Because like I mentioned earlier, life's gonna happen, but as long as you stick to the budget as much as you can, you'll start to see some significant improvements in your financial habits. For some people, budgeting can be really difficult. And if you're one of those people, I just highly recommend using either the envelope system the Cash App system I mentioned my nephew did, or the automation system. That way you can avoid the temptation to overspend. The envelope system is something that comes from Dave Ramsey, and that's really where you just actually like take the cash out of the bank and put it in an envelope that's labeled for your different budgets. So you might have one labeled gas, one for groceries, one for fun. And when the cash runs out, you're done until the budget renews. I personally don't trust myself with cash, so I prefer to use apps to track my spending in the various categories. But I do have a couple friends who absolutely love the envelope system. Again, the Cash App is what my nephew uses. And then automation is just where you set up all your bills on auto pay. You auto deposit a certain percentage of your income into your savings account. It should be at least like 10% if you're not aggressively paying down debt. And then you can also set up auto withdrawals with your investment broker that trigger every payday or the day after payday if you want to be safe. I do the day after payday just in case my employer wants to get funny with my money. But I think automation is the best method. It's kind of like an out of sight, out of mind type of thing. And I also like the Cash App method, that way, if you don't have the money on your Cash App card, yeah, you can upload it, but, try to be disciplined and don't do that. Don't add to it. But I like the idea of leaving your debit and credit cards at home. So like I said, by automating, it's taking that out of sight, out of mind approach. It's kind of hard to spend money that you don't see or easily have access to. And that's really what you want to do. Just make it more difficult for you to access it. All right. Second quarter time. Okay. So now we can talk about some rapid debt reduction. This strategy is something that my mom also taught me, and it's the exact strategy I use to pay off $20,000 worth of debt in like 22 months on a $46,000 a year salary. All right, because I've heard people say to me, I'm putting that out there because they've said like, oh, you can do this because you got lawyer money. But everything I'm sharing with y'all, I did like the first 3 quarters, all of it I did before I was making lawyer money. Right. And I was even able to help my brother duplicate this process when he was just making $13 an hour. So at the end of the day, it's not about how much you make. It's really about how much you keep. And if you steward your money well, like none of this is impossible for you, no matter what your income is. So I don't want to digress too much, but going back to the strategy, this is one of those ones that aligns with what Dave Ramsey teaches, but I didn't learn it from him. So he calls it the debt snowball method. To execute on it, what you do is you make a list of all your debts from smallest to largest, just like you see in the example on the slide. And you'll write out a description of the debt, the overall balance, the minimum payment, your actual payment, your goal payoff date. And then once you've paid off the debt, you'll write down your actual payoff date. What you want to do is pay the minimum payment on every debt, but the first one or the one that you're attacking at the time. So for the first debt, you'll put every extra cent toward that. I think on that sheet we had, it said there was like $355 left over from the first check and $1288 or something like that from the second one. But in this example, it's just assuming you have about $600 left over in your monthly cash flow that you can put towards debt. So on this example, the first card is your Macy's card. It has a balance of $300. So you'll take $300 of your $600 that's left over and put it right on that Macy's card. You'll then take the remaining $300 and put it on the second card, which is a Capital One. So you'll add it to the $50 minimum payment. So your Capital One card is going to get a total payment of $350. And the Macy's card will get cleared in month 1. Then in month 2, instead of pocketing that extra $25 you have because you paid off the Macy's card, you'll add it to your $600 in disposable income. And now you'll put that money toward the next debt in line, which in this case is Capital One. So in month 2, your Capital One balance will be down to $350. So you'll put $350 of your $625 on that. And the remaining $275 will be added to the $50 minimum payment on Chase. And then you'll make a total payment to Chase of $325. And then in month 3, you'll have an extra $675 because you're no longer paying the minimums on Macy's and Capital One. So you'll put that whole $675 on Chase until that balance is cleared. And month 4, Chase is cleared off and you'll attack the next card, which is Bank of America. And that's the exact thing I did when I was paying off my debt. The key is really just, you don't pocket the extra money. It's not like, oh, I got $75 more. It's like, nah, pay that debt off because it's revolving debt and it's dangerous, right? Some people also prefer, instead of doing smallest to largest, to go by interest rates. So they'll go with like the largest interest rate down to the smallest one. For me, I kind of did a mix of that. So I paid off the small debts first because you get those small wins. They build your confidence. But then I had two cards. I had one that had a $5,000 balance on it and one that had a $6,000. Now the $6,000 one had an APR of like 24.99, but the $5,000 one had an APR of 7.9. I attacked the $6,000 one first because it was costing me more in interest. And then I came back to the $5,000 one. And I did that because they were close. Their balance sizes were close. I mean, it was only like $1,000 difference between them. Now, if the balances would have been 5,000 and 15,000, I may have made different choices because now there's a $10,000 gap between them. But it really just comes down to like how fast you're trying to knock that debt down and what your goals are. You know, the smallest to largest way is the simplest way. And I'm just like, keep it simple. Also with the snowball method, you can use your tax returns and work bonuses to accelerate your debt reduction. This is also something I did every time I got a tax return or a bonus at work. I put it right on my debt balances. So when you put those large lump sums on your balances, it cuts down your principal stupid quick. I know it's tempting to ball out with your tax returns and your bonuses and whatnot, but it's way better to have that money in your pocket every month when that debt is gone. You'll be surprised how much money you have when you're not paying credit cards or any of that, really. And also, once your credit score goes up, because that's another thing we're going to talk about real quick, but once your credit score goes over 700, you'll start getting offers in the mail for 0% APR balance transfers. And that was something else I used. Like once my score got over 700, because when I started this process, I was at like a 592, like straight up. And then I got over 700. Now I'm over 800. So you can really, accelerate your life real quick. But once you get those 0% APRs, you can start balance transferring those high APR cards to the 0% ones. And that lets you pay down the debt faster too, because now you're not getting hit with revolving debt all crazy. Like I said, that one card was 24.99. If I'm not paying that compounding interest every month and I'm just paying the principal, I'm going to knock that balance down way quicker. Another thing you can do when your credit score goes up is you can negotiate better interest rate with your creditors. You can also refinance your car or other installment loans like your mortgage. And that will ultimately free up more money to go toward debt too. So it's just being responsible, doing the math to figure out what works best for your finances. And also, if you do refinance, I recommend not extending your payoff date. For example, when I refinanced my home, I didn't refinance for 30 years, even though that would have given me a much lower payment because I was already 10 years in on my original loan. So instead, I just refinanced for 20 years to keep my payoff date the same. My payment was still lower, not as low as it would have been if I went out 30 years, but I was getting that savings on the interest rate being lower. And that's really what made the difference. So when I did the math, extended for 30 years, it cost me more in interest anyway. So that's why I say, like, you might not want to extend it out. All right, so here we're going to do a very high level overview of ways to improve your credit score. I would love to deep dive on this, but honestly, it could be an entire presentation by itself. So for now, I'll just hit some key points that you can use as a guideline when you're trying to raise your score. Quick disclaimer, the standards here aren't an exact science. Different creditors may use varying point levels to assign your score, but these are still like great rules of thumb that you can use as a guideline. So the donut graph on the right comes straight from FICO's website. It shows the different things that make up your score and the percentage weight that's assigned to each category. And as you can see, payment history and the amounts owed make up the bulk of your score. So that's followed by like the length of your credit history, credit mix, and the amount of new credit. The information on the left breaks down those categories a little more, and they're great rules of thumb for DIY credit repair. So first, you have your debt to income ratio. This kind of like indirectly impacts your score on like the credit utilization side, but it's really more relevant when you're trying to get a mortgage or a refinance. A good guideline to follow is to have a debt to income ratio less than 40%. Some banks allow for 45, some want 20 to 30, but 40% is a good rule of thumb to shoot for when you're first getting started. And what a 40% debt to income ratio means is a sum of all your minimum payments on like your credit cards and other installment debts. They don't exceed 40% of your gross income. And this is your income before taxes are taken out. So in other words, if your gross income is $5,000 a month, the sum of your credit card payments, your car note, mortgage, student loan payments, all of that can exceed $2,000 cumulatively, because $2,000 is 40% of 5,000. The next standard here, it revolves around credit utilization. This directly impacts your score. And to get a 700 plus score, you'll want to keep your credit utilization to less than 30% individually and cumulatively. This means if you have one card with a $1,000 limit, your balance shouldn't exceed 300. And if you have 4 cards that between all 4 of them have a limit of 10,000, then your limits between, or your balance between all 4 of them can't exceed 3,000. Okay. For 800 plus credit score, you want your credit utilization to be less than 10%, but 30% is a good starting point. Third is your payment history. It's best to have no collections, late payments, judgments, bankruptcies, etc. on your credit report, meaning you want 7 years of clean history. But most times, once you hit 2 years of clean history, you'll start to see some significant improvements in your score. Fourth is the age of your credit history. Obviously, the longer you've had credit, the better your score. I do want to point out that you don't have to have 8+ years or 25+ years to have a solid score, but it just helps if you want to, get over 700. But you don't have to do it. Again, these are just guidelines. But fifth are the number of inquiries and new accounts in the last 2 years. You can see here you want less than 6, 4, or 2 in the last 2 years. The lower the amount of inquiries and new accounts, the better your score. And finally is your credit mix. Ideally, you want to have at least 1 installment loan, like a mortgage, car note, or student loan, and then 2 to 3 credit cards with banks like Chase or Capital One or Bank of America. You want to have a bank card instead of a store card, because a store card you can only use at that store, right? I've heard 3 credit lines is a sweet spot for the number of credit cards you have, but again, different banks have different standards for how they assign points. I have way more than 3 credit cards and still have over 800 scores, so I guess it really just depends. If you are looking for some DIY credit repair, you can start by requesting a copy of your credit report from all 3 credit bureaus. Every state lets you do this at least once a year for free. You can do it online at annualcreditreport.com or by mail. There is a book listed here on the screen. It's called Repair Your Credit Like the Pros by Carolyn Warren. In that book, she says it's better to request your reports by mail than using the site. Apparently, you can inadvertently waive some of your dispute rights by using the website and clicking accept on some of their terms, but I won't hold y'all. I have not fact checked that. I'm just repeating what I read. But what's important is that you pull your credit report annually, check it for any inaccuracies, and start the cleanup process from there. If I had time to walk y'all through the entire process tonight, I definitely would. But since I don't, I wanted to put that book out there. It costs a little less than $15 on Amazon, and it is definitely money well spent. Some other things to think about before we move on is you can fast track improving your credit score by having someone who is responsible with their credit cards and who keeps their credit utilization low add you to their account as an authorized user. I've done this for my friends. I asked my mom to add me to hers just because she has way more credit history than me. That authorized user can definitely be a gem. Because it allows you to inherit the credit history right away, and it will improve your credit score drastically most times in just 30 days. So once you get your credit cards paid off, also don't close your accounts. You can cut up the cards if you want, but leave the accounts open because closing them will hurt your score. Also, once you've paid them off and are responsible with them, you can ditch your debit card altogether and just use your credit card for everyday spending. This insulates your checking account against fraudulent transactions, and it allows you to earn rewards on money you're going to spend anyway. I never use my debit card anymore. Half the time I forget what it looks like. All my everyday transactions go on credit cards, but I do track my spending on my credit cards just like I would if I was using my debit card, and then I pay the balance in full every payday. So just make sure you're familiar with the different reward systems on your credit card so you can maximize those benefits. And again, make sure you're paying your balances in full every month. I have a rule where I won't buy anything that I can't pay off in 30 days. That just helps me keep my finances in check, and it keeps me from getting back into that mountain of credit card debt I was in like a decade ago. Because once you broke, you don't want to go back there when you get out. You just don't, right? All right, so like I said, those first 2 quarters, that was the heavy lifting. So we're going to get into the last 2 quarters, the second half, the home stretch. All right, so after you have paid off your revolving and high interest debts, the next step is to focus on building a 6-month emergency fund. The way you do that is by taking your total expenses from your income statement and multiplying it by 6. The reason I like 6 months is because I've read that most professionals, it takes them about 6 months to secure a new job. So 6 months is a nice guideline, a nice rule of thumb. And mind you, you'll also want to update your income statement before you do this, because your expenses will likely have decreased significantly because you no longer have those credit card payments or other high interest debts. So let's say your monthly expenses are $2,000 a month now. That would make your goal for the emergency fund to be $12,000. So $2,000 times 6. And you'll want to put this money in a high yield savings account so it can earn you a little interest while it's sitting there, because you're supposed to keep your emergency fund liquid, and you will use it. Trust me, I've used it several times just because life happens. And I know that savings accounts these days aren't paying that much in interest. So what I do is I just look for savings accounts that have generous sign-on bonuses to make up for that. You can go right on nerdwallet.com, or you can just Google best savings account sign-on bonuses, and you can figure it out from there. I think I used Citibank maybe a year ago, and I also do this every 12 months because I'm getting that sign-on bonus as often as I can. But they were paying $400 a month for setting up a savings account with them last year. I think it's $300 a month. I mean, not $300 a month, $400 period when you set up, and then $300 now. But if you're only going to pay me 0.5% APY, but if I put like 10 or 15,000 in there and then I get $300 or $400, that's way more than, like a percent or two. So that's how I do it. Banks hate me. I'm always getting them for their money. That's really what it comes down to. But once you have that 6-month emergency fund, you can start investing aggressively. And now you can you might start out with that 30-70 lifestyle. That's where I started too, where you're like saving 10, giving 10, and investing 10, and then you're living off of 70. But then you'll eventually, over time, move more towards a 70-30. Again, it's about those small, consistent steps that compound into a major effect. And we'll talk a little bit more about that transition on a later slide. But for now, just focus on the process and let the results take care of themselves. That's kind of what I wanted to stress. And we're on to the fourth quarter. Okay, so this is a question I get a lot too, like when should you start investing? So a general rule of thumb is to start investing after you've paid off all your revolving and high interest debts. A high interest debt is a debt with an APR greater than 6%. The general idea is the stock market, the total stock market earns on average 7 to 8% a year. We know the S&P 500 does 10%, but I'm just keeping it conservative. So if you can earn more from investing than you can paying down your debt, they say you should invest. And I'm talking more along the lines of installment debts, because revolving debts they're dangerous and you want to get rid of credit cards as fast as you can. But with your installment debts, I would say just do the math. For me, everything's paid off except for my mortgage and student loans. And thankfully my mortgage is way under 6%, but my student loans, some of them are, some of them aren't. But it would take me 20 years to pay off all of my student loans, and I'm not waiting 20 years to invest. That's just not going to happen. You know what I mean? Law school is expensive. But when I did the math, it made sense for me to invest because I can make money faster through investing than I could if I was trying to pay off all that debt, right? But like I said, revolving debts are a different animal. But just do the math, figure out what works best for you, and go from there. But that's the general rule of thumb. All right. And I know regardless of what I say, some people aren't going to want to wait until they've paid off all their high interest debts and built up an emergency fund before they start investing. And that's okay if that's what you decide is best for you. But for those of you who don't want to wait, again, I suggest that 30-70 plan where you're saving 10, investing 10, giving 10, and then, living off of 70 until you can get those high interest debts paid off and you have that emergency fund. That way you can still scratch that investment itch, build your savings account, but also be like dedicating a significant portion of your income to paying down debt. Then once the debt is paid off, you can increase your investment percentage accordingly, which you'll probably jump from 30-70 to 70-30 real quick. All right, so now that we talked about when you should start investing, we can talk about where. In my humble opinion, the first place you should start investing is your retirement account. As was mentioned before, you don't want to take away from your future self. So instead, you want to make those decisions in the present that your future self will thank you for. And one of those decisions would be to start your investing off with your retirement account at your job. At minimum, you should contribute up to your company match. I mean, that's free money, and you don't want to let your employer off the hook by letting them pay you, less than what they owe you in benefits. Dave Ramsey also, he recommends putting at least 15% of your gross income in a retirement account. I personally recommend calculating your financial freedom number, then using a Save $1 Million calculator to figure out the amount you need to contribute monthly to your retirement in order to hit that financial freedom number by the age of 65. That way, you know exactly what you need to do for you instead of having some blanket theory that works across the board, supposedly. But the way you figure out your financial freedom number is you determine your annual expenses, then you multiply that number by 25. So in this example here, if you have annual expenses of $50,000 a year and you multiply that by 25, you end up with a financial freedom number of 1.25 million. This calculation is based off the 4% rule that came from the Trinity study. And the Trinity study basically said if you withdraw 4% or less from your investment account annually in retirement, you have a 95 to 100% chance of having money left over at the end of 30 years. It depends on your stock versus bond allocation. But once you have your financial freedom number, you can go over to Save $1 Million calculator on Bankrate to figure out how much you need to contribute monthly based on your age, expected rate of return, and time horizon. And I've already done this online. I can pull it up too. But basically, like if you started at 25 with nothing and you contributed $503 a month at a 7% return, you'd hit 1.25 by 65. And let me pull that up for y'all real quick too, if my internet will work with me, because it's trying not to. All right, here we go. So here's the Save $1 Million calculator from Bankrate. Like I said, I already worked it out for y'all, but you see here the age is 25, target age 65. Amount is currently invested is at zero. I'm sure most people have more than $0 sitting around, but I just wanted to bare bones it. And if you save just $500 a month and it's adjusted for inflation, you see here, you hit 1.25 million by 65. And all of these are inputs that you can change as you want, but there's always a default in here, and I just left a lot of the defaults alone. Well, I left this default and this default alone. I didn't change these two, and I input this information. So that's a pretty cool tool to use if you have time just to play around with it to find your financial freedom number and how much you need to contribute each month. Oh, and the other thing is once you figure out that amount, traditional wisdom is to max out your retirement contributions to reduce your tax liability. For me, I just contribute what I need to contribute to hit my financial freedom number because I didn't want all my money tied up in retirement accounts that I can't touch till I'm 59 and a half. But everyone's situation is different. So you do what works best for you. I decided to put a screenshot here of the 2022 limits. So if you're interested in looking at that, you can. Maybe when I got Mark money, I'll be maxing out those 401k and other retirement account, limits to reduce my tax liability. But for right now, I need me coins, All right, so let's talk about this transition from 30/70 to 70/30 a little bit more. Once you start to execute on a plan, what you'll notice is the longer you budget and automate your life, the more accustomed to it you become. People, like I said, always adjust to their new norm. They actually did a study where they gauged the happiness of lottery winners and people who suffered a tragic accident. They came back to them a year after that life-changing event. And what they found is they had the same level of happiness. People just adapt to their new norm. That's just what we do. What you'll also find is the longer you steward your money wisely, the more opportunities will come your way. It'll seem like they're just coming out of like everywhere, and then your income will start to increase. I mean, really, at the end of the day, if God can trust you a little, he'll bless you with more. That's just what I've seen in my life. The law of stewardship is a universal law. Another universal law that I've seen play out in my life and the lives of others is the law of reciprocity. You really do get out what you put in. My mom always talks about how you can't outgive God, and I've definitely found that to be true. So I just say, don't despise small beginnings, give freely, because you really do reap what you sow, and you often reap more than what you sow. And while these universal laws may not seem that relevant, I'm sharing this with you so you understand, the longer you're committed to this process, eventually grace will step in and your income will start to increase, which increases the amount of money you can invest. And like I said, it's happened in my life, it's happened in the lives of those around me. It's just universal truths. And I'm confident it'll happen in y'all's lives too, for real, for real. But not only that, once you've built up like a 1-year emergency fund, I have a 1-year emergency fund. So I've stopped contributing to my emergency fund altogether. And instead I've put my savings money into my 70-30 as well. So now that 10% that I had allotted for savings is allotted to investing. I just put the savings, that 10%, into safer investments, like a S&P 500 ETF or index fund. So that, that's a more stable investment. It's not as risky as like the options, even though Mark has made the options as safe as they could possibly be. But I still like to keep my savings separate just in case, also they're very easy to liquidate. But if you look at the rule of 72, like by switching from that 0.5% APY to like a 10%, like my money doubles every 7.2 years at 10% instead of every 144 years at 0.5. So it's kind of a no-brainer that once your emergency fund hits a certain level, you just want to invest every single dollar that you can. All right. And again, like the more that you free up, the more cash flow you have for investing. Also, avoid lifestyle creep if you can. Like I said, when I started, I was doing 80 a week. My income has gone up significantly. I still do $80 a week. This lifestyle creep can really dig into your pockets too. So try to avoid that if you can. Just don't go on spending sprees when you pay off that high interest debt. Redirect that income to investing. When you get raises, this is something else I learned from my mom. Instead of pocketing that money, set up that money to go straight to your investments before you even see it, because you're already used to living without it. So you might as well just keep living without it, right? I do the same for my 401k contributions. When I was working my way up on my 401k, every time I got an increase at work, I just put that increase right into the 401k until I hit the company match. And that's like a real easy way to do it gradually over time to where you don't even notice it. So for example, if you get like a 3% annual merit increase at your job, then when that merit increase kicks in, instead of putting that 3% in your pocket, you just put it straight to like your 401k contributions. And if your 401k is already at that level we talked about, then you can put that money toward investments. So that's another like gradual way to do it. Also, constantly recalibrate your zero-based budget just to see if you can trim fat anywhere else. Sometimes, like I said, lifestyle creep happens, but if you keep checking every so often, like every 6 months, or you can do it every month if you want, then you'll stay on top of that and you'll be like, oh, I can trim some more fat here. I can trim some more fat there, and then one day you'll just look up and you'll be like, oh, I'm at 70-30, So that's really what it's about. Just being consistent, taking those little steps. It took me about 3 to 4 years to make the transition from like being broke, living check to check, to the 70-30 lifestyle. Doesn't mean it's going to take y'all that long. For me, I had like 20K in credit card debt. I owed 6K to the Bank of Mom. I had to put out 5K between bar review and taking the bar. And then I had a car that I was paying off that was at like 26,000. So all those things taken together. And like I told y'all, at that time, I was on like a 46,000 a year income. So I was able to pay off all of that in like 3-4 years on that little bit of income. Like, you might do better. You might make more than me. You might have less debt than I had. So like I said, it doesn't have to take y'all 3 or 4 years just because that's how long it took me. It might take y'all 1 year. And I do have friends who took 1 year and they were rolling after a year. It just really depends on your financial situation. Currently, I am living off 20%, tithing 10%, and investing the other 70%. And thanks to Mark's rolling 4 strategy, retirement is less than 2 years away. So it's definitely doable for y'all, for sure. So for this next slide, I wanted to give you all a visual of why it's so important to live the 70-30 lifestyle. If you look at this graph, which has the savings rate on the x-axis and the years to retirement on the y, you'll see that the more you save, the faster you can retire. This particular graph is based on an annualized return of just 6%. And it shows you if you invest 70% of your income, you can retire in 8.3 years. That's at a 6% return, which is very, very, very conservative. Excuse me. If you increase that annualized return to 7%, you can retire in 8 years flat. So what's important to note is this is regardless of the dollar figure you earn, because it goes off the percentage of your living expenses relative to your income instead of the dollar amount. In other words, it doesn't matter if you make 50K and live off 15, or you make 100K and live off 30. Your 30% is relative to you and your lifestyle needs. What's dope is Rob Berger. He created this financial freedom calculator that lets you play around with different dollar amounts and return rates to calculate your years to financial freedom. And I'll pull that one up for y'all too. Real quick, there's a link to it on the slide, but I'll pull it up so you can see it. So you can see here, this is the 6% with 70% invested, right? And what was cool is I just changed this number to 50% just to see. So I was like, if you just do in the money SPY puts and you're super conservative and you're investing 70%, how long would it take you? 3 years. That's it. So, and not Dave Ramsey, Ray Dalio, he gets like 8 or 9%. So if you just did Ray Dalio's all weather strategy, which is also extremely conservative in portfolio allocation, you could be done in 7.5 years. So you can see here, and Mark is, telling us we can get way more than 50%. I'm just being like the most conservative I could possibly be on here. But that was exciting for me to be like, oh man, if I invest 70% and I'm just getting 50% return on my money, I could be out in 3.8 years. That's crazy. You could literally just buy in the money SPY leaps and be good in less than 4 years. That was just game changing to me. I'll also, like I said, there's a link to this calculator on the slide, but you can see, like, it lets you play around with the numbers here. You can change your annual income, withdrawal rate, annual savings, all these numbers here. And if you change them, the years to financial freedom, sorry, that wasn't right. It just calculates for you. He put all the calculations in for you. You don't have to do nothing but plug in your inputs. All right, and we are finally to the home stretch. I know we covered a whole lot, but I wanted to give you guys as much value as I could in the time allotted. Keep in mind, like I said, we walk step by step from living check to check to living financially free. So if done right, you can complete this entire process in 5 to 10 years or less, because Mark gave us the cheat code. You could probably take half the time now. But yeah, this last slide is just a high level recap of all the steps we went through tonight. And I just encourage you guys to study this PowerPoint when it gets posted in the Facebook group, and keep watching the video over and over again when you have some free time, so you can just map out a course that's realistic for you. And I can't wait to see you all on the other side, living leisure.
Full of gems. We appreciate you, Cuzzo.
No doubt.
Man.
That was an excellent breakdown. It don't get no better than that, T.
Nah, for real. I was just because I just recently walked away. I was just finna have to get my situation together by the end of the month so I could, make sure I'm on my P's and Q's. I'm gonna definitely have to go through this video and use some of them tricks that she was talking about, because
she gave
laid down a lot.
She
laid
did.
down debt, credit, budget, all of that.
All of that.
Yeah, we appreciate all that, Khalida, for real.
Yeah, no doubt. So make sure that got all the gems set up out here.
No, I appreciate that. You definitely
y'all learn something. Make sure to show her some love in the chat, in the comments, man, because that was a lot of info that she put together. And like I said, I ain't asked her to do this. She came out the shadows and volunteered this information. You feel me? So we appreciate you, Khalida, for real.
Yeah, no doubt.
We do.
All right, AJ, you got us.
Yes. All right. So for the week ahead, y'all, please do not forget the market is closed tomorrow. So use that time to play this video back, get your savings plan together. It's still early in the year, so you can set your goals and end the year strong. Okay. So make sure you're writing that down and tracking that, but the market is closed. So use that as a study day tomorrow. Earnings for this week. On Tuesday, we got Home Depot, Macy's, Palo Alto, and Teladoc. All right. Wednesday, we follow up with Lowe's, okay? So you can kind of get an idea from Home Depot, see what Lowe's is doing. We know the housing market went off this past year and going into this quarter, so it's going to be interesting. Thursday, though, we got Moderna, we got Block, or some people know as Square. We got Autodesk, Coinbase, and Beyond Meat, all right? So I personally, y'all know I love Square, so I'm gonna be looking to hear what they got to say about this iPhone-based credit card acceptance. So I'm gonna be on lookout for this earnings. For conferences this week, we got Consumer Analyst Group of New York virtual conference, okay? That hosts General Mills, Coca-Cola, Kraft Heinz. So as all of y'all know, consumer staples has been popping this quarter so far. So that'll be something to pay attention to. On Thursday, you might see something from Meta or Facebook because the CEO Zuckerberg will be giving a speech on AI and the metaverse and what his future plans are. So be on the lookout there. And the economics report for this week, okay? Thursday is hot. We got the Q4 GDP coming in. All right, we have unemployment claims and crude oil inventories, as well as FMOC member Mester is going to be speaking, most likely on interest rate hikes. All right, so Thursday is going to be hot. If you're a day trader, make sure you are being careful. And then Friday, we of course have our core PCE price index. All right. So between interest rates and inflation, still on and popping topics in the economics realm. So just make sure y'all are studying and staying on your P's and Q's for the week ahead. That's all I got for you this week, though.
That's a fact. That's a fact, man. Take tomorrow, man. Like she said, do some studying, do some economic research, get some data points together. Have a Zoom with some cousins that you cool with, that you rock with, that's not gonna make you feel stupid. You know, y'all hop on the Zoom together and study, you feel me? And not just charts, because like I said, that technical analysis, it's not gonna do it this time. You're gonna need more than that, you feel me? You're gonna need a real strategy. You're gonna need some real economic data. You're gonna need more of an edge than, you know, just support and resistance. So just make sure y'all are staying on point. Do not put money in the market that you're not willing to risk. You feel me? I've taken one L specifically this year. I've only traded probably 3 times. You feel me? Significantly. I had a couple of $100 trades. I've only taken 3 real trades this year. One of them was a L. But I wasn't really tripping about it because wasn't that much money. You feel me? I stopped myself out. Wasn't more than I was willing to risk. Very calculated and disciplined. And in this type of market, you're gonna need that, because just gambling, you're not gonna hit as many times as you was hitting last year or 2020. It's gonna take a little bit more discipline, strategy, playing both ways. You feel me? It's not gonna be all call season. It's not gonna be 3-month call season. You know, it's a rough environment for everybody. That's not just for people that is new, or you might be feeling like you don't know nothing because the leaps ain't working like they used to. Everybody having a hard time. It's a lot of investment banks that's losing a lot of money in this market. Kathy losing a lot of money in this market. You know, it's a lot of people losing a lot of money in this market. So just, you know, take your time. If you got to pull out and regroup, I feel you. No, pull-out game got to be strong. You feel me? But besides the point, we definitely appreciate y'all, man. Khalida, again, we thank you. Anytime you want to come on, if you want to expand on credit one time, whatever, you know, just let me know, because we doing this weekly. So, you know, I don't know if you can tell, but we need somebody every week. So if you got anything else for us, you are more than welcome on stage. You feel me?
Appreciate that.
All right, y'all. What, y'all got anything else for them for we skate?
No, just stay on your game. The more you learn, the more you earn. That's what the GOAT tells us. So just
that's a fact. That's a fact.
Keep learning. Don't stop.
For real. Put your head in the book, put your head in the article, man, and make sure y'all do some homework.